I thought I would start with a bit of history, a very short and very quick history of the Standard Contractual Clauses model. And let me see, I don't know if there's some, if I go back to back in time, I can go back to almost 30 years when, for the very first time ever, there were restrictions in the law, in the 1995 Data Protection Directive, around international data transfers outside of the European Union. And as part of those restrictions, there was a way out, if you want, or a way forward, which was the idea that the European Commission could approve a set of clauses, standard clauses, that would then be used in order to legitimize those transfers. And as soon as the directive was adopted, there was a lot of work going on to try to adopt these clauses. And I remember when I was a very, very young lawyer that there was still no set of official clauses. And the International Chamber of Commerce in particular, the Chamber of British Industry as well, were working, trying to develop this contract, a template agreement that hadn't been drafted before. And you've got this here. If you look carefully, you will see that it's dated 1998. And that I still have a copy of this draft that was being put forward to the European Commission as a possible way forward. And then this happened. In 2001, the song of the summer was Eternal Flame by Atomic Kitten. And this is important because it was an inspiration to the European Commission to issue the first ever set of official standard contractual clauses in the summer of 2001. And it was a contract, a template agreement for transfers of data from controllers in the EU to controllers. So it was a controller to controller standard contractual clauses that was, from that moment onward, the official version of the European Commission as covered by the directive. That was for controllers to controllers. And then later that year, Christmas time, the Christmas song of the year was called Something Stupid. Right? And you can see that. And that led to something that was not very stupid, was actually very clever, was the first set of standard contractual clauses for transfers from controllers to processors. So in 2001, between the summer and the winter of that year, the European Commission, a few years after the directive had already been passed, so clearly transfer had been happening since the moment the directive became effective until 2001, but without contractual clauses. But from 2002 onwards, the companies could work on the basis of this set of clauses. The challenge was that the Commission had really tightened the screws in making this contract very difficult to comply with, particularly by the importers outside the European Union. And the International Chamber of Commerce continued to work and lobby the European Commission and say, come on, we need to have a slightly more sort of commercial contract, something more pragmatic. And what happened was that in the winter of 2004, the song, the Christmas #1 was, do they know it's Christmas? But the European Commission knew it was Christmas, and it was a big Christmas present to everyone that the International Chamber of Commerce draft of the new version of the controller-to-controller standard contractual clauses was adopted, formally adopted, by the European Commission. This is already 2004, so nearly 10 years after the directive had been passed. That was extremely good news because this was a much more flexible agreement, something that was more commercially driven. But of course, what was missing, and by the time cloud computing was starting to be a thing, was the controller to processor. And things took a long time. A year went by, another year went by, the International Chamber of Commerce saying, come on, we need to get a controller to processor set of clauses. And eventually, 2010, Eminem broke the internet, as it were, with the adoption at the beginning of that year, in 2010, of the controller to processor, the standard contractual clauses. The challenge with that one was that instead of following the International Chamber of Commerce very, again, pragmatic and commercial approach, frankly, the European Commission turned the 2001 version, the December 2001 version, into an even stricter one. And for a number of years, we were left with the two versions of the controller to controller, and then the 2010 version of controller to processor. The 2001 controller to processor was abandoned, and we were left with that until a few years later, this happened. And this guy, he didn't record any record, he didn't become any Christmas #1, but he changed the world, for all of us at least, because this is Max Schrems, which led to the adoption in 2021 by the European Commission of what today is the official version, replacing all of the previous ones, of the standard contractual clauses. And it was a new approach, it was a modular approach, where it was just one set of clauses that, depending which module you use, is for controller to controller, controller to processor. They even added controller, processor to controller, processor to processor, and you can play around with all of that. And that is the, let's say, Schrems 2 compliant version of the standard contractual clauses. A lot of the changes were incorporated by the European Commission to address the GDPR, of course, that had been adopted a few years earlier, but mainly to address the Schrems 2 decision by the European Court of Justice, and it includes a number of provisions dealing with government access to data and what the importer of data coming from the EU had to do. Of course, by that time, what had happened was that the UK had left the EU, and in true sort of, I don't know, 1970s punk style, the UK adopted its own version of the standard contractual clauses, International Data Transfer Agreement, but helpfully and wisely, the ICO also adopted an addendum which allows you to rely on the EU standard contractual clauses for transfers out of the UK, with just the addendum. So where we are today is, forget about the old version, forget about something stupid and everyone else, and focus on Schrems 2 and Brexit. And if you are relying on the standard contractual clauses model today, there is the 2021 version ready to use, available to any organization, whether you're a controller or a processor, and whether you're transferring to another controller or to a processor. And of course, if you are in the UK, you can rely on on the UK original version or the addendum version.